What up, YouTube? Is this your boy, the Visionary? Welcome to another episode of Fireside Chats. Today's episode is going to be a part 2 in a video series I'm titling Syrian Civil War and the Path to World War III. If you've been following my channel, you've been noticing I've been spending a lot of time focusing on this particular subject because it is, in my opinion, the nexus or the, I would say, the fulcrum to a very major event in American as well as world history. And I do believe it's going to be the path to World War III. So the story so far, current events, is that reports have been released by Western powers that Assad had just attacked a city or province within the country using chemical weapons. And a UN inspection team has been dispatched to go over to do some tests and to get first-person accounts on what has happened on the ground. So the issue remains whether or not Assad did use the chemical weapons, and if the U.S. or the Western powers are actually just using this as a pretext to go in to stage a humanitarian intervention. In the past, within the past few years, past year or so, reports have been coming in that the United States have been trying to build a pretext off of the fact that maybe they're using chemical weapons, and every time a UN inspection team would go in, they would find that A, they were not using it, and B, it was actually the rebels using the chemical weapons against the Assad forces, and they have been attacking their own people specifically. Now, what's going on is we are basically on the precipice of war, and the U.S. has been trying to build up a coalition of the willing in order to go in to basically get international, I would say, authority to go in and intervene, so on and so forth. But ultimately, in my opinion, I don't think it's for humanitarian reasons specifically, because you would not plan a military strike, you know what I mean, to go in and to intervene. You would actually send a UN council to go in, send a UN army to go in and to basically stop what the fuck is going on, the conflict between Assad and the rebel forces. I would originally think you would do that, but for some reason they're not doing that specifically. So now you have a major opposition between the UN, which is a whole bunch of other international countries who are basically against any sort of intervention that's going on over there. Then you have the latest news article where Cameron was voted down by his own parliament not to go to war. Basically, the UK is against them going to war over there. Everyone else is backing down except for France. France is basically on the side. They're not really saying much about it. But I think that says a lot about the sentiment of what the fuck is going on in Syria specifically. You know what I mean? There was a news poll that talked about how 90% of Americans think that we should not go to war, that we should stay out of it, we should mind our own business and stop funding the anti-Assad rebel resistance that's fighting the conflict over there right now. There is a YouTube poster that I'm subscribed to called Kafka Winston World, who is really on top of stuff like this. She's into geopolitics, politics, and economics, and she veers towards the alternative media conspiracy fringe of the view of the world specifically. But a lot of her stuff that she posts is very spot on. I think you should listen to what she has to say. I have a video right here that I think you should listen to, so I'm going to put it on and, you know, just listen to what she has to say, and I'll be back on in a few.
Hi guys, August 30, 2013. I posted a video last night that Cameron was voted down on a military strike in Syria. The British Prime Minister of Britain. Okay. Obama set for limited strike on Syria as British vote no. This was posted in the New York Times today, I believe. No, late last night. President Obama is prepared to move ahead with a limited military strike on Syria, administration officials said Thursday, despite a stinging rejection of such action by America's stalwart ally, Britain, and mounting questions from Congress. How dare this guy just act alone? Prepared to go solo? Really? Are we not a part of this country? Now, I read somewhere yesterday, 91% of Americans do not want this war. Many in Congress are beginning to voice their opposition to what President Obama... He's not a dictator. And if we let this guy just do whatever the hell he wants without holding him accountable, we have created a country with a dictator. It's our responsibility. It is our responsibility to put this guy in his proper place. And at this point, the proper place is jail. How dare we let this guy with... And look, I don't care. I do not care that he's a puppet and that strings are being pulled, by the shadow government. The fact is that we can stop this puppet. And if he's just a little puppet, why are we giving him so much power? We've got to get this puppet out. This guy is an arrogant, evil shithead, folks. He is so immoral. He is a criminal. He's a murderer. And he is working for not the American people, but he is working for the interests that are regarded as the elite. This is about money. This is about stealing. This is about oil. This is about natural resources. This is about control. It is not about saving the Syrian citizens from Assad's use of chemical weapons. Are you kidding me? Logic, common sense. If we're so upset about people dying from chemical weapons, then why? Why is our response to drop bombs and kill more citizens of Syria? We have to stop this guy. It is up to us. Get this information out. Get all information out. Work.
Yeah, so as you can see, very vocal about what's going on. And I remember she's like one of those straight arrow type people. Like whenever she's going to curse, she stops herself because she's very aware of that. But recently, after all the things that are going on, she just started cursing. Like, yo, I guess it might be a form of her relieving herself. But I agree with her 110% on her sentiment on the situation. You know what I mean? Like most people that I discuss with on this subject about just Obama in general, particularly black people, is they don't see all the things he's doing, all the laws he's passed, the NDAA, ND Resource Preparedness Act, National Defense Authorization Act, National Defense Resource Preparedness Act. These things are unconstitutional. They basically strip the rights of the American people away, and it's not even in wartime, it's just wartime and peacetime. And, all of the actions that he's done, specifically the new wars, the illegal war in Libya, the secret wars in Yemen and Somalia, the CIA hit list, the kill list that he has, where, you know what? I'm going to start targeting people all over the world, and because of the NDAA, I have the right to do that. You know what I mean? Like, people need to really think about this shit. This is dictatorial. This is tyrannical. But no, I talked to black people about it, and they try to defend it. It's like, yo, what, are you smoking something? Like, I wish I can just give these people the actual documents of what the fuck is going on. So, a basic recap of just the Syrian event in and of itself. We have the Syrians have been locked in a civil war for about 2 years. Roughly a year and a half, half a year into it, we step in and go, we're going to start supporting the Syrian rebels, period, because we are against Assad. Assad is anti-West. So obviously we're going to supply the Syrian rebels and basically involve ourselves in a proxy war. A year later, the Russians step in and say, yo, you know what? Nah, we're going to start supporting the Assad regime. And after they stepped in, that's when you started seeing the reports later on about the rebels begging for more aid and assistance because they were getting creamed. They were getting murdered out there, period. So once the Assad regime started to basically turn the tide of battle, like pretty much one-dimensionally turn the tide of battle, that's when you start to hear the stories of Assad using chemical weapons. Assad is using chemical weapons against his own people and the rebel forces, blah, 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 blah. That's when you start to hear the story pop up. And that's when you start to hear the narrative being built towards saying, you know what, we might start to stage a humanitarian intervention into the country to stop Assad. Period. Now do you see the correlation? Now do you see the parallel? We are trying to fund these rebels to topple their government, but the fact that they're not being toppled, the fact that they're being beaten back, is now cause for alarm for us to go, you know what? He is one piece in a larger plan that we have to take off the board. Now we have to involve ourselves. Now we have to invest our resources into knocking him off his throne and taking over his country. It's as simple as that. This isn't something that's just random. This shit was planned like a good 10, 15 years ago in the making. This shit has been in the making for years, but no one seems to understand that shit, period. So now you have a current situation where we're trying to build up an international coalition of the willing to go in and to attack the country to stop Assad. You know what I mean? And it's kind of funny because, first off, the UN, for the past year and a half, after the stories were coming out that Assad was supposedly using chemical weapons, they kept going on and saying, listen, there's no verification that he was using chemical weapons, and more or less we found evidence that the rebels were using chemical weapons. So your basis of going in is wrong. It's flawed, period. Now that you see that, you keep seeing the war drums getting beat more and more by the West. We gotta go in. They already sent 3 warships over there that's off the coast of Syria, and they're planning for an attack. Now you see that the international community, represented by the UN, is basically saying, no, we have no evidence of him using chemical weapons, so there's no reason to go in. And now the newest story from what you heard within the video recording was that now Cameron, who was right beside the U.S. about, you know what, we're going to go in and attack Syria because we believe he's using chemical weapons and blah, blah, blah. Even his own parliament said, no, we voted you down. Fuck that shit. No, you're not going in. This is bullshit. That should say something. That should say a lot to the American people as well as people in general. Even the report, like she just said, 90%, I'm going to try to see if I could verify that through other sources, 90% of the American people are voting against this war. There's no point in it. You know, the reports came in, Assad is not using chemical weapons. It's actually the rebels using chemical weapons. And the reports are coming in stating, look, we staged that shit. We gave them the chemical weapons, and now we're trying to blame Assad. Now, the new narrative in the situation is that it's not because Assad is using chemical weapons, we don't need to verify that. It's the fact that chemical weapons were used, period, either by the rebels or by the Assad regime, and that's giving the U.S. the actual pretext to go in and to start a conflict and to attack the fucking country. You know what I mean? It's geopolitics is a fucking crazy thing, and I think people need to pay attention to what's going on, because this conflict, if it gets any bigger, if the Russians decide to come in, if the UK decide to come in, if France decides to put their 2 cents into this shit, if the Chinese or say something and really get into this shit can be blown up all out of proportion. Thank you for paying attention, and thank you for watching the video. Stay tuned for another video I'm going to put down to explain the real reasons why Syria is very important within the geostrategic framework of what the fuck is going on in the Middle East. Thank you for listening. Take care. Peace.